Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 left its mark on the Halloween franchise. Whether it was good or bad, we can't erase it. So I guess it's up to the fan base to determine if they embrace it or not. And I've concluded that we just have to accept it for what it is. So let's start this review and discussion. And just a heads up, I have a big rant at the end of this video. But let me just say that I do respect what Rob Zombie has done, and I respect his vision for this movie. But it just wasn't for me. And I think Rob Zombie is a great filmmaker in his own right. Consequently, after the success of Rob Zombie's Halloween remake, they followed up with Halloween 2. And I don't even know where to begin with this movie. Even when I seen it in theaters, it was a lot for my mind to process. I was basically traumatized. And one word that was always being promoted with Halloween 2018 was trauma. But Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 embodied that. I wasn't too hype about the sequel being made because at the time, Halloween 2007 left a sour taste in my mouth. I was still trying to digest that movie. But I went into the theater and I wanted to walk out so many times. I pushed through it though. I would have to say this movie and Tom Cruise's latest Mission Impossible are the only films that made me feel that way. Oh, and Midsommar, but I digress. And the only thing on my mind when I left Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 was, God, I hope they don't make a third movie. And just a quick synopsis for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. This movie takes place after the events that happened on Halloween night 1 year ago. 2 years if you're watching the director's cut. But anyway, Michael is on a hunt to kill yet again. Only this time, Laurie discovers the motive behind Michael's killing. And she in fact finds out that she's Michael Myers' sister. This would have been a great standalone horror movie, only if it removed Halloween from its title. It had the blood, guts, kills, and genuinely scary scenes, and most importantly, the psychological components made it scary. But say what you want about the movie, it had great actors. And people who know me are probably saying, Ryan, you're saying positive things about Halloween too. That's true, but trust me, you'll hear all my negatives soon. But like I said, you had a solid cast. You had Scout Taylor Compton, Malcolm McDowell, Danielle Harris, and Brad Dourif. But the only thing that didn't connect or resonate was the dialogue given by these characters. It's like 1 minute I'm loving the dialogue and bam, something just diminished everything I just enjoyed. I mean, Rob Zombie had these great characters but used them incorrectly. But Scout Taylor Compton did a great job in the 2007 remake. I always praised her performance. She made that Laurie Strode character her own. But Rob Zombie decided to make her scream throughout this whole movie. Scream and cuss. That's all she did. And it distracted me in a way. However, it's certain scenes that I admire her in. Like the exchange between her and Danielle Harris in the beginning. However, this movie did get kind of deep if you think about it. Michael Myers from the previous film affected almost every character individually. A complete 180 in Laurie Strode and a complete 180 in Dr. Loomis. And Laurie Strode, she was a sweet, innocent teenager in the 2007 remake. But with the tragic events, it caused that trauma, and there's that word again. But she's legit at a breaking point. Truthfully, she was at a breaking point before she found out that she was Michael's sister. And it's a strong correlation in this movie and the 2007 movie because Michael Myers was at a breaking point in Smith Grove whenever he was talking to Dr. Loomis and he was screaming and yelling. And in this movie, Laurie Strode is at that same breaking point. And we see that during her therapy sessions. She also has pushed Annie away. And she found a new set of friends, more like the rebel type, partying and drinking. She just went downhill completely. But aside from her character, Scout Taylor Compton is a trooper. She sold her injuries so well in the beginning. I mean, she was limping around and it almost made me kind of hurt just looking at her. And I can't say enough good things about her performance. Even Rob Zombie said she went all out. It was freezing and cold on set, and she was put in the worst situations as possible. As you see, she was always in those rainy scenes in just like a hospital gown or just regular clothes. And one of my favorite things that Rob Zombie shared about Scout was the chase scene in the beginning. Scout Taylor Compton would fall harder and make it look more believable than the stunt double. I respect that. Hopefully I get to meet her at one of these horror cons because she's one of my favorite actors in the whole Halloween franchise. So let's talk about this Dr. Loomis character. Dr. Loomis is just a slimeball in this movie, profiting off the victims of Michael Myers. And he's the reason that Laurie Strode found out that she was Michael Myers' sister. He was all about the money, and he had a big ego. I mean, the dude told his assistant, if I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you. And I was like, dang. And one scene I really enjoyed was Dr. Loomis at his book signing, and Linda's father spazzed out. I mean, he pulled out a gun. It wasn't loaded, but you really felt that scene because you felt that hurt that Linda's father was going through. And Sheriff Brackett, also played by Brad Dourif, he spazzed out on Loomis too. And I think his portrayal of Brackett is underrated, and it isn't talked about too much. And I love that confrontation that happened at the end of the movie between Dr. Loomis and Brackett. Brackett punched him, and that was just good acting. And like I keep saying, it was good acting in this movie. As far as Danielle Harris playing Annie, she's not afraid to tell Laurie how it is. They had great chemistry together, and I respect both of their on-screen presence. Annie is definitely seen as a motherly figure towards Laurie. In the previous movie, Annie was the one that was a rebel. Now she's the innocent and mature one. And that bathroom scene with her and Michael, man, that got intense. And I like how Rob Zombie slowed it down and it faded away where we couldn't see anything. We just heard sounds. And you just seen all the destruction. So let's transition and talk about Tyler Mane for a second. I never liked how tall Michael Myers was in this continuity, and it's almost like a cheap scare tactic. If we make him bigger, he'll have a more intimidating presence. Wrong. I didn't find anything scary about Michael Myers in this film. He's basically taking orders from his mother's spirit, and it's just laughable. I think Halloween 6 and this movie are probably the worst portrayals of Michael I ever seen as far as appearance-wise and just him being mentally weak. Because in both of those movies, he was being controlled. And just the mere fact that Michael Myers wore clothes to adjust to the fall weather baffled me. He had on a freaking farmer's jacket over his overalls. That's not the only bad part. He even had his own tote bag. All of this was just ridiculous. And speaking of ridiculous, how about that mask? Rob Zombie took a risk that didn't pay off at all. And it gets worse, guys. In the second half of the movie, his whole face is completely exposed. And just that image of Michael in a strip club with his mom and his whole face showing, it was just crazy, man. I don't know. And y'all thought I was done. But at the end, Michael Myers actually speaks. Yes, he speaks. While killing Dr. Loomis, he says, "Die." That's 2 strikes already. His face being shown, and Michael Myers speaks. Oh, and the John Carpenter score wasn't even played throughout this movie, so I guess that's 3 strikes for you, Rob Zombie. And the fact that Michael Myers said something, that was just like, what in the world? And that was the very moment that Michael Myers and the entire franchise went under. However, Rob Zombie did have some creative kills in this movie. One in particular, the head stomping. I like that. And in the beginning sequence, Octavia Spencer's character was killed off. Michael Myers felt ruthless in that scene. He was stabbing her over and over, and that was one of the moments that I really didn't mind him grunting, because every time he stabbed her, he was like, and he was sounding like he was back for a vengeance. So I didn't mind that too much. In spite of this movie having decent kills, it disappointed me with the Halloween atmosphere. It's little to none Halloween imagery in this movie. I guess Rob Zombie wanted to go with the darker tone, hoping to substitute that with the fall atmosphere. But honestly, I just didn't like that, and I didn't think it worked. And I hate movies that are so dark that you can barely see what's going on. That's my pet peeve about certain horror movies. That was one of the main problems I had with Rob Zombie's Halloween 2007. The last 30 minutes of that movie was just so dark, you couldn't even see what was going on, and I had a hard time knowing what was going on. Leave a like down below if you agree with that. But another pet peeve of mine is everything being so wet. Why does it always have to be raining in these horror movies? I mean, it makes the movie a little bit more messy and sloppy in my opinion. I understand that it always rained on set during this movie, but it made this movie that much horrible. Now I want to discuss and rant about the big plot hole in this movie. The first 25 minutes of this movie was a flashback sequence. You had Michael being took by the coroners and he escapes. And apparently this isn't a part of the dream, according to Rob Zombie. But the audience doesn't know that. And then we see Laurie Strode getting surgery and recovering, along with Annie. And Michael makes his way to the hospital. Laurie tries to escape. She almost gets caught by Michael, but then she wakes up. So all of that is a dream, right? And then it says 1 year later. But, you know, it's like the movie intertwined that into the actual storyline. And I don't know, it makes the dream seem true, which is impossible because it makes no sense at all. I'm getting confused just talking about it. But I have a question for y'all. Do you think Michael Myers is supernatural in this movie? I mean, in the remake, he was shot directly in the face by Laurie Strode. And in this movie, he's perfectly intact. Yet again, this movie doesn't make sense. And this movie just negates all that. And I think Rob Zombie said, yeah, I messed up on that and we knew that. But, you know, it wasn't a big deal. So I knew this movie was going to be pure crap when the coroners were talking about having sex with corpses. I was like, nah, this movie is not for me. And I must admit, though, in that scene, I did like when Michael burst out the van. It was some great imagery along with long shots of Michael Myers. He actually looked scary in this scene. And I also thought the mask looked decent in that scene, too. But I just feel like this movie had too many distractions for the average Halloween fan. And when word of mouth gets out, it can affect this movie so many ways. The 2007 Halloween was one of the highest grossing Halloween movies in the franchise, with 80 million generated, and I think it still owns that Labor Day box office weekend record. But when Halloween 2 came out, it only earned around 33 million, which is still a lot for the Halloween franchise, but a big drop off from the previous movie. And speaking of box office, the cover art looked great, but it's misleading in a way. Michael had his mask on in the cover art, but in most of the movie, his mask is non-existent. And just in general, I think some may say Rob Zombie doesn't respect the Halloween franchise, but in reality, I think he's a huge fan. He's a huge fan of the franchise, but I don't think he likes the fans. But he definitely pays homage in both of his movies. He even offered John Carpenter a cameo in this movie, but of course John Carpenter declined. He also paid homage to Jamie Lee Curtis. As you remember in this movie at the Halloween concert, the song that was playing was called Terror Train. And of course, that's one of Jamie Lee Curtis' movies. And from what I've seen, Halloween 2018 stole a lot of elements from this movie. Remember when Ray was killed in Halloween 2018? Well, I'm pretty sure Danny McBride and David Gordon Green stole that scene beat for beat from Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And also, that face stomp by Michael Myers, that was taken from this movie as well. So, Halloween 2018 stole a lot from a crappy movie. Oh yeah, when Laurie was running through the woods in this movie, that's the same thing as Allison running and she falls down and all those mannequins are surrounding her. That's the same thing in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 when Laurie's running and she looks up and see all the trees and it's those camera shots and that little confusion going on. So that was definitely took by David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, I think, as well. So, to conclude my overall perspective about this movie, it was a complete abomination to the Halloween franchise. From Michael Myers' face being exposed, to him being portrayed as a homeless hobo wandering the wild, and let's not forget about him taking orders from his mother. And oh yeah, him actually speaking. And the movie had no mood, no atmosphere, no Halloween vibes whatsoever. And not even a peep from the Halloween theme. This movie is just a walking plot hole, and you know, no fan of this franchise should rank this movie above any Halloween installment, and that's straight up facts right there. So let me know down in the comment section on how you feel about this movie, and I would love to share your theater experience when you went and watched it. And my next Halloween review will be the Rob Zombie's Halloween 2007 remake, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And I actually like that movie, so I'm looking forward to doing that review. So subscribe to my channel for more Halloween content, and catch you guys on the flip side. Be safe. Peace.